First, a congratulations to all the students that are here attending the conference. A lot of people talk about working in the sports industry, but you're doing something about it. By attending this conference, it's definitely a step in the right direction to pursuing a career in the sports industry. So hats off to you and congratulations and all the best in your pursuit. Our next speaker is going to be a lot of fun. He earned his MBA at Pepperdine University. He's worked 15 years in the sports industry. He's worked for the National Hockey League. He's worked for the National Basketball Association. He's worked for Major League Baseball. He's worked in the NFL, and now he works in the MLS. You name it, he's done it. In fact, he's back there talking to Raymond Chan right now about working in the Winter Olympics. So he wants to add that to his resume as well. Not only has he worked in all of these places, but what he has done, he's done it very, very well. He's certainly a leader in the industry, and we're privileged to have him here today. He came onto the scene in Seattle in 2004 as the director of marketing for the Seattle Seahawks, and he and his team completely repositioned and re-energized a brand. And they did that through a tremendous focus and care on their fan base and their brand image. And he'll take us through that here this morning. And this year, he added the Seattle Sounders FC of the MLS to his responsibilities. And the Sounders, as you know, have quickly become the model franchise in the MLS. And it doesn't just happen. It takes hard work, creativity, discipline, commitment, and perhaps most importantly, a focus on the fan. This guy does it better than most, and if you want to work in sports, wake up, take notes, because what you're going to hear from this guy is going to help you throughout your career as you pursue a job in the sports industry, and then his fundamentals apply throughout your career. So please join me in welcoming the Director of Marketing and Partnership Development for the Seattle Seahawks and Seattle Sounders, a good man and a good friend, Bill Chapin.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that fantastic introduction. I'll take you to dinner later. He also said that I had an opportunity to work in all these different leagues. I can keep a job. It is true. I appreciate the opportunity today. I'm going to just insert this flash drive here, and we can get underway. Presentation by our friends up north. Thank you so much for coming down to Washington and helping us with that great presentation. I want to make this as interactive as possible. I'd like you to ask questions, and if you don't, I'll pick on you. So please ask questions, and we're going to do that throughout this. I want to take you through a little bit of a journey of what we had as a challenge at the Seattle Seahawks and how that's applied both to the Seahawks, but really how that's translated to a real live version of what's going on with the Seattle Sounders FC. Who here has been to an NFL football game? Fantastic. Who here has been to a Major League Soccer match? Interesting. Good. Who here has been to a Seattle Seahawks NFL game? Okay, very good. And does anybody know about the vaunted, I heard this the other day, one of our draft picks said vaunted 12th man, and I thought that was fantastic. Deion Butler from Penn State had said vaunted 12th man. Who here knows what the 12th man is? Or a conceptual notion of that? Okay, great. We're going to talk about that and all of these things as we kind of dive into this. I had the opportunity to be hired by John Rizzadini and Todd Lywicki, our Chief Operating Officer and CEO of the Seattle Seahawks. And when I came to Seattle in 2004, we had several interesting factors, let's just put it that way, that we had to address. And so what I want to do is walk you through a case study today of what we did, what the factors were, what was involved, and how, as prospective next generation of our sports executives are, how do we address that as we're moving forward? How do we address problems? How do we solve them? How do we integrate solutions? And how do we create those moments of truth, and that's a term I'm going to use over and over today, moments of truth to really create an integrated fan experience. Now, I have an interesting background. I started really in ticket sales, and I started with the LA Clippers back in the day with some of those players. And ticket sales, and I know KL will agree, and I know Aaron will agree, and I know Kevin will agree, and pretty much all of you will know, ticket sales is the lifeblood of any professional sports organization, because if you don't have fans in the stands, we call it butts and seats. The hotel industry calls it heads and beds. I've got other things, but I can't say those. This is the predominant issue that American sports teams face today. And in a global environment that we just saw this fantastic outline of, it's even more prominent today as we're busy in our hectic lives, and there's so many options, there's so many things to do, that you really have to understand what that process is. But it just doesn't start with ticket sales. You have to have a foundation. And I think that's where we'll start. So you see this imagery of a large hawk head here, and I'm going to go ahead and try to adjust the size here so everybody can see this just a little bit better. There we go. When we came in 2004 to the Seattle Seahawks, there hadn't really been a guide map. There wasn't a mission statement. There wasn't a values assertion. Not that those things weren't there, but you've heard the old adage, when something's written down on a piece of paper and you write down your goals, that only 2% of people do that. Did you know that? When you write stuff down, goals and objectives, 5 years objectives, 6-month objectives, whatever that is, only 2% of the world does that. And the reason why that's so important is when you write it down, you put in your brain that is an accomplishment that you're going to go get. And so that's why business plans have been developed, and corporate America has done a fantastic job. NBC has done that, GE has done that, Apple has done that. We know those case stories. But necessarily in the sports world, that doesn't always translate. We're busy in a very small environment with a very large persona, but sometimes we don't take the extra effort and time to sit down and say, what are we doing? Where's the guide? What's the guiding principle? What is the litmus test that we apply this brand filter through? So what I want to walk you through is what we've put together over the course of 6 months, which was back in 2005 and now 2006, what we call our brand guide. And our brand guide, for those of you who may not know, is really a pictorial of who you are as a company. But we took it to another level, and we sat down with our senior managers at one point, and we said, who are we? Who is the Seattle Seahawks? What does the experience look like at Quest Field? What is the 12th man? Who do we represent? What are we? And, you got our CEO saying this, and we had our COO saying this, and I was saying this, and they were all generally in the right vicinity, but we were all rowing a little differently. And in an organization that needs to be swift and firm, and you've got to be quick, and you've got to be quick to react, we all need to be in perfect sync, like oarsmen that are going and gliding across Lake Washington, right? So we kind of realized, hey, we need a model, we need a way to start developing this so that we can find our true stroke here. And so we started to work with a consultant who used this brand essence wheels. Anybody seen this before? I'm sure you have. How many people? I'm just curious. How many people? Most of you. It's actually started back in the day with Guinness. Mark would be happy. It was an Australian company who brought this model. It's not unique. There's nothing phenomenal back there. This is nothing revolutionary. But one of the things we got to do is, and you've heard of focus groups, we sat a lot of season ticket holders in a focus group the night before we got together with our executives to go through this brand wheel, and the focus groups were very clear. We used analogies of animals, what would you call a Seahawk, and what kind of car, if the Seahawk was a car, what would it be? Was it a Pinto, or was it a Ford, or was it a Ferrari? And you can imagine we didn't get the answers we were looking for. The answers were not exactly what we were looking for at all. So then we decided, okay, we've got a problem, and we've got to fix that problem. And so we walked through this wheel of a brand essence wheel. And if you can see the left-hand corner of that, it's broken up into 4 categories. It's what does the product and service do for me? from a rational standpoint. And then on the right-hand side is how would I describe the product and service? And on the bottom right is how the brand makes me feel, and the other part is how does the brand make me look? And all the statements that you see up there that we'll go over a little bit is what we wanted to be perceived as. But the reality was we were not being perceived in this way on many levels at all. And the question is, well, why? Well, because there wasn't a distinct platform using all the different characteristics, and we'll talk about that: imagery, sounds, game presentations, game experience, hospitality, all of those different tactical elements that lead into a strategic plank of who are we going to be, how are we going to represent, and what's the game experience going to be? What is it going to look like? Now, the product and the service in the top left corners, what does the product and service do for me? We got it together as a group, and you can imagine we've got a senior management group together, and we're all in a room, and we've been told that we can't leave until we all come into full agreement. And Kevin's looking at me going, that doesn't happen. You're right, it doesn't happen. It happened over 2 days. And we fought, and we cajoled, and we compromised, and we looked at it and we said, well, really at the base level, we want to be entertainment. We want to be a reason to celebrate in this city. We want to be a reason to party, if you will, a little bit, and have fun. You know, we are involved in this community. We want to be an extension of the fact that we're part of a community asset. But there's also other elements, too. There's relationship building. We want to make this a better region. We're a part of this. We're not going anywhere. We're thankfully blessed with tremendous ownership with Paul Allen and tremendous leadership with Todd Lewicki, and they've planted their roots here. Many of you may or may not know, but at one point the Seahawks were going to leave this fine region. And thankfully, due to Paul Allen and his great stewardship, we remain here and we will be here for a very, very long time with no intention of ever leaving because our roots here are in the Pacific Northwest. We wanted to provide prestige for the city, no different, if you will, but on a smaller scope than what's going on in Vancouver and the Olympics. And we wanted to be part of an exciting ritual. Well, where did we come up with all these concepts? We literally went over question after question. Who do you want to be? Well, what does that mean? You've heard the kind of the exercise of the highest why. I could say, well, we want to be great. Why? Because we want to represent the city well. Why? Well, because we live here and we're proud of what we do and we want to represent that well, and that's an important aspect of our culture and our organization. Why? As you can see, you can go over and over into this arena, and at some point you finally answer the why, and then you agree to disagree that there's no longer a use for that as you go into the 15th or 16th question. But that's how we arrived at this. We go to the right is how would I describe the product and service? We wanted to be winners. We wanted to be perceived as the home team with the first-class, world-class experience. Community service, a Sunday tradition. At one point, we had a wonderful tagline called Seahawks Sunday, Your Sunday, bringing it back to the fan experience. And I can walk you through all those different things, but the reason why that I think is so important is because we were coming together as a team, and we were saying, we're all agreeing upon these elements. This is going to become our filter. This is going to become our lens that we can then go forth to all of our community programs and all of our business initiatives and all of our sales efforts and all of our imagery and our brand and our retail shop and everything. And we have a common platform that we're all looking through, that we can all see. And if something comes introduced to us that doesn't necessarily fit this brand filter, then we'll know that doesn't pass the litmus test. In the middle there, you see facts and symbols, that top part. And one of those facts and symbols was Quest Field. We have the unique and privilege of playing in what I would categorize as one of the best football stadiums in all the National Football League. We also have here the 12th man, and I mentioned that earlier. I'd love to get from you real quick, just blurt it out. What do you think the 12th man is? Anybody? Just a couple hands. What do you think the 12th man is? Yes. What's that? The crowd. Great. What else? Engagement. Fantastic. What else is the 12th man? Passionate. Perfect. One more. Yes. Pride. Fantastic. Thank you. You guys all are perfect. It's exactly right. It encapsulates all those things. And we didn't have a lens, we didn't have a way to celebrate that 12th man. So we brought in a tradition of the raising of the 12th man flag. And that's part of our pregame celebration that we have, that we bring in a unique sports figure or local entity or local personality that represents the Pacific Northwest. We were using a brand filter to say the 12th man is symbolic of this region and it's a part of you. And it became a grassroots movement. And the 12th man is very organic because it's really generated by our fans. Now you say, well, how does that happen? How do you help guide that? Where was that come from? Where did that start? Did somebody just come up with the 12th man one day? Well, no. Came in 1983 when our former GM, Jack McCormick, had given a 12th man jersey to the fan because the Kingdome had such a raucous crowd. Now, there is a little known story that people thought that the wave was started at the Kingdome. Actually, it started at the University of Washington. But for whatever reason, it picked up at the Kingdome, and the fans became truly involved. And when they know that they can make a difference in a game, there's empowerment. And one of the things I want to have you walk away today is fans need to feel empowered. So as the future marketing executives and sales executives of what you're doing, one of the things I would really stress is that fans need to be empowered to feel like they can make a change in the game, that they can really implement and feel that they can do that. And that's been proven, and we wanted to really bring that out, and you're going to see that as we start to talk about the imagery. The bottom part of it talks about our brand personality, and that kind of sounds strange. A football team having a brand personality, well, what does that mean? Well, it's the characteristics again, because as humans, we think visually, but we hear auditorially in many cases about words. Now, the words then describe a visual image for us, and in those visual images, it then imprints upon our mind exactly what we're thinking, and then we visualize that, and then that becomes a potential platform. We wanted to, on our brand personality, be relentless, rugged, innovative. We're in the Pacific Northwest. We're part of an innovative culture. Look at who's our corporate headquarters in Seattle. Amazon, Microsoft, Nordstrom, all innovative and revolutionary companies that have been birthed in the Pacific Northwest. We wanted to be a part of that. And epic and respectful. And then I want to have you look at one term that I think has been very important for us, and that's character. There's football character, a driven, hardworking, football-educated, smart individual, and then there's a character of the person. Now, in today's, you don't have to get up other than this morning and read today about character issues that are plague the sports industry, and it's very unfortunate. One of the key terms that we introduced at that time, back in 2005, was that we wanted to have character individuals who were representing that brand, both on the field and off the field. And that's a very different type of approach. Now, that's become the coin phrase as we move into the 2010, but back in 2005, that necessarily wasn't the case. And this all wrapped into this middle area where if you were to synthesize all these words, and trust me, we had like 20 of these up on the board, and I'm scribbling, and Todd's writing this, and John's writing that, and everybody in the room is doing it, and then we had to literally condense it down into this one kind of brand wheel. And then we had to decide there were three core words that at the heart of what the Seattle Seahawks are, this is what would represent that. And after much debate, prayer, discussion, we came down to passion, character, and 12th man. Passion of our players and our fans. Character that I was speaking to of the players and the character of the organization. And the 12th man, our fans that represent us and we represent them. There's a symbiotic relationship. Now you go like, oh, this is great, Way to go, marketing boy. That's fantastic. Good job. A for the report. Fantastic. what does that mean true? What does that mean now out in the real world? So I want to walk you through what some of that stuff means, because it's important to see it as it relates to imagery. I'm a big believer, I know Kevin is a big believer in imagery, that pictures tell stories, and we are storytellers. At the end of the day, that's what we are. We are great storytellers to tell people about what has been good about sports and what is good about sports and what happens. And so you see this image here. This is our cornerback, Marcus Trufant. For those of you who know, he's a local product. Went to Tacoma, or grew up in Tacoma, went to Washington State, played cornerback there, then was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. He's a great story. And the story here is that we've got a little boy who's coming over the cross of stadium, and that our player is a character player who takes time out of his very busy, regimented schedule to sign an autograph. And it's not passed on you that the boy is fervent in his dedication to the Seahawks. But those images are really important. The images you saw of Vancouver are breathtaking. Those images are there for a reason, because they imprint upon our mind the fact that there is something good, that we're a part of something bigger. And that's what's great about sports. That's why you're here today. It's about being part of something bigger. Sports means that the guy next to you can high-five you and hug you and kiss you on the cheek because you just celebrated a touchdown and you don't even know his name. You're high-fiving this guy. He's like going nuts, and you're like, dude, I don't know you, but I love you. I mean, where else do you do that? Don't do that at church, right? Don't do that in the grocery store. The moments that are going to be celebrated up in Vancouver are going to be special moments, and people are going to be going nuts. Where else do they do cowbells? When they go jumping off a huge ramp off 280 feet and then land and thankfully live. I mean, where else does that happen? Nowhere but sports. That's the platform. So you want to tell those stories in unique and compelling ways. And what the brand guide became for us was a communication piece to all of our partners, to our season ticket holders, to our stakeholders, to ourselves, of what this represents. Because this hadn't been done before. We know conceptually what this is. But when you put it down on paper, back to my point, when you put it down on paper and when you get a graphic designer who understands what you're doing with these words, they can start to put pictures together like that. What does that say? That says right in the concentric circle, passion, character, commitment, dedication. I don't even have to say those words when I see a picture like that, because that's what that communicates. Now, how does that relate to the real world? When we put marketing programs and positions and initiatives in place, it has that type of look and feel. It has definitions about the brand. It talks about the brand strategy. We can incorporate the more institutional concepts. But when I have a picture like that of Lofa Tatupu, you get that sense and feeling. When I put a picture of the flag and the tradition of what the 12th man means, it engenders a response. When I put together our brand personality and I show a picture of a character individual such as NFL Hall of Famer Steve Largent, you know exactly what that means. At least I hope you do. And then if we haven't done that, we need to refine that process so that people understand what that is. Our fans here. I want to take a moment about our fans. The problem back in 2005 and prior was that we would conduct a lot of research about why our fans were not coming to the games. I don't know if you know this, and it's embarrassing to admit, but in a spirit of full disclosure, we opened up Quest Field, at that time Seahawk Stadium, in 2002 to a non-sellout crowd. And you know the old adage, when you build it, they will come, didn't work. And how could that be when you're bringing a brand new stadium that's beautiful, that's been funded by not only Paul Allen, but the state taxpayers, and you've got a phenomenal partner who's just next to you in a beautiful stadium at Safeco Field? How does that happen? Well, we had done a lot of studies and found that fans, specifically moms who were making decisions specifically on the east side, didn't feel necessarily comfortable coming to games because they saw face-painted individuals who had clear passion, but were scaring people. And you say, well, that's not a big deal. Football games, you know, gridiron, gladiator, that's to be expected. Correct, it is. But there's a perception issue. There's a perception that maybe my family's not going to be safe, or there's a perception that, you know, I don't want to have my son or daughter or my teenager exposed to that. And we took that very seriously. So one of the things we started changing is the imagery. We started showing fans who are passionate, but they don't have face-painted faces that look like the Oakland Raiders and I'm going to kill you when you come to the game. Please don't stand near me. I cheer very loudly. That's not what happens. Now, we show face painters, but how did we show the face painters? Through a child, through the innocence of youth. These fans are just happy to be there. They're dressing up silly and having fun, but that was important. Now, the another part that we struggled with, and now we lead the NFL in, is alcohol management planning. Much of this has come up in times, and this is real-world stuff. We would have fans who would overconsume, create a bad impression, and what's the big nomenclature that we all use now in today and age of how do you hear about things? Referrals. So you have one inebriated fan at one game sitting in the middle of a section. How many people do you think that affects? Hands. Who said that? 1,000. Almost. Try 1,500. One fan is inebriated at a game. He touches roughly 15 people who tell another 10 people, who they tell another 10, and it multiplies like a multiplication factor that is unbelievable. All the research proves it. I don't like necessarily talking about that because, who likes to talk about that? Yeah, at one point in time you had a problem with that. But the reality is you have to address it, and it's real. So our CEO now takes pride in kicking people out. I think it's kind of funny, but he loves it. Our ejection rate at one time was maybe 30 to 40 per game. Guess what it is now? Under 1. That whole perception was changed. I give credit to Todd because he was very bold. Here's a leader who says we clearly need to have tickets sold, but takes a stand on a character issue. We're not going to tolerate that. It's unacceptable behavior. We revoke their season tickets. We revoke their friends' season tickets if it's associated with. And we have a complete plan in place as it relates to how that game atmosphere is taken part of. And we get critical. Now, I'm not here to say, good boy, Bill, and great job, Seahawks. That's not the point. The point is now the NFL has established that same mandate all across all 32 teams. Game atmosphere, safety, those issues that we really never talk about because we all hide behind the guise of marketing and sales and those things is critical to the day-to-day functioning of an organization. And you have to have character to make those decisions. And we're fortunate that we have that. So sorry about the brief tangent, but I want you to see how that all incorporates into this fan characteristics. Other things that we talk about here, great visual shot. You thought this game was actually in Green Bay 3 years ago. It actually was in Seattle. It was on Monday Night Football, and it was snowing. It was fantastic. But look at that shot. It shows the pageantry. It shows the gridironness of the game. And this is what I wanted to kind of talk about as well as our brand promise. So we put together a brand guide. We have concentric circles. We have our 3 core words. But there's more to be done as you're shaping the strategic direction of your team. You want to talk about a brand promise, a vision statement, a mission statement. We went hard and long, probably 6 months on figuring out what the brand promise is. And the key was that we wanted to use terms that brought people together. So that's why you see the term unite. The Seattle Seahawks unite the spirit of the 12th man throughout the Pacific Northwest. And you see these visions of right here, Matt Hasselbeck and his passion, Tama, our hawk, which took 3 years to get to fly out of the tunnel finally, and now does, and hopefully will not do what our friends from Atlanta had with that little hawk incident about 3 weeks ago. And we then developed a whole platform around the 12th man and what that means. Now, there was some lucky timing. The team on the field happened to have a fantastic year that year, and that continues to have propelled us. But that mission continues to this day forward. We developed through that standards of how the brand is to be used, how the guidelines are to be used with all of our partners, because it's not just us telling the story. Virginia Mason's telling the story. Jones Soda's telling the story. All of our partners are telling our story. And if you don't communicate that with a central platform issue, how are they going to know who you are? They're going to give their version of your version. So that's why the standards were put in place. And then I love this, is like, these are what not to do's. Now, they seem logical, but I can't tell you how many times we've had logos misused by people because they thought they had the right one, and it's not. Do you think that happens at the U.S. Olympic Committee? No way. That won't happen. But at this level, you need to recognize that you need to have guidelines in place to tell everybody about that. We also had a subcategory for all of our kids clubs and our Blue Thunder, our marching band, our WAMU Theater, our FSN Lounge, the Virginia Mason Athletic Center, the training facility of the Seahawks. All of this had a brand guide to this. And what I wanted to kind of end on this particular point on the Seahawks was that a mission statement was formed at the same time. And I had the privilege of working for the Walt Disney Company, which had a really tremendous mission statement and vision statement, and everybody knew that. Do you know what the 3 core words, by the way, are for the Disney Corporation? Does anybody know? Take a guess. Take a guess. No wrong answers. 3 words. Fun. Magic. What else? Family. One more. You almost got all of them. Who said entertainment? Family, fun, entertainment are the 3 core words for the Walt Disney Company. Does that explain everything for Disney? They've got a brand focus. We wanted to have that similar approach with our 3 words as well. And then we developed the mission statement. Football is our passion, character is our commitment, 12th man is our focus, and excellence is our goal. As Kevin alluded to, I've had the privilege of working for a lot of different teams in different industries. I have never yet been with one team that has a mission statement. Does that matter strategically? Yeah, it does. Does it ever been discussed usually at a very formal or informal level? No, it hasn't. I would challenge you that from a strategic underpinnings, this is essential to getting everybody on the same page, because then everybody in ticket sales knows, and corporate partnerships knows, marketing knows, IT knows, HR knows, everybody knows. And now we started distributing this, and this became, all these images started popping up everywhere, and they were all consistent. Does that mean we still don't have battles? Of course not. Does that mean we still have to sell tickets? Of course we do. Does that mean we still have challenges with corporate partnerships in these economic times? Absolutely. Does this mean we have a new challenge as it relates to the World Wide Web and how we do digital media with all of our imagery? Absolutely. But you have a platform that you need to discuss. Now, I want to transition a little bit with Sounders, but I want to be able to make sure I answer any questions on Seahawks as I do that. Anybody have specific questions on Seahawks or how that works, or any review of the brand? Yes, sir. Thank you so much for asking that question. That's a great segue. Tim Ruskell, our general manager, who was the former assistant general manager at the Atlanta Falcons, bought into this early on. And character has become a key word for him. Actually, character was introduced by him. So he was sitting in the meetings, and he's a big character believer. And they review this prior to training camp. I think some of you have known that, NFL players at times have some character flaws. I think we all do, but those seem to be exacerbated a little bit more because they're in the public spotlight. Our goal is to mitigate those as best as possible. And so we communicate this brand strategy via our football operations department pretty much on a daily and a weekly basis. That's exhibited by our great leadership that we have with some of our key players who are our spokesmen, Lofa Tatupu, Matt Hasselback, and others. And at times you run into a situation where that doesn't always happen to be the case, but you reinforce that by saying we're only going to go get quality guys. That was represented this year by our, hopefully last time in the first round of last time in the first top 10 in the draft, with Aaron Curry, who was a character individual linebacker from Wake Forest. Quality guy was the most important determination. Now, is he a phenomenal football player? Absolutely. But he's a character guy. He called himself a mama's boy in the press conference. That's an awesome statement. No football player does that. Now, I might be taking that a little too literally, but I don't think so, because he says the reason why he's where he is today is because of his mom. That's not always said in the football world, so I think that's fantastic. We have a bunch of great guys, and the more we have that character part of that, and that's espoused in the locker room by our leaders like Matt and others, that becomes a habit and a culture. So I'm glad you asked that question. Any other questions on the Seahawks? Yeah. Well, it's a good question, and it's a little bit of a combination of both. Certain opponents obviously drive certain attendance factors. Let's be honest. When Green Bay came to town, that would be a factor. Kevin would say the same when the New York Yankees come or the Boston Red Sox come. But the factor really comes back to what I want to really emphasize is that the game experience has to be great. Who's the first person that a fan sees when they walk in the door? A parking attendant. Who's the second? An usher. Who's the third? A concession operator. Who's the fourth? Maybe another fan. They've been touched by 5 or 6 different opportunities before they get in. And if those touch points aren't good, then the fan experience isn't great. Because you know what? Everybody's got options in this day and age. I can watch it at home. I can watch something else. I can spend time with my family. I don't have to go spend money and go spend crowds and do that. The fan experience started changing. We got better at selling, creating better moments of truth, and so that all kind of came in at the same time together at the end of 2004 and into 2005. Now, as I said, there was a factor on the field as well, but those changes had already started back in 2003 when Todd got on board and John, and then I came a little later, and we started making those changes, and it all's combined together. Now, we've got a challenge this year. We've got an amazing challenge. We went 4-12 last year. That's real. Our renewal rate is extremely high. That's real. That's because of great moments of truth that we created. We have thankfully 15,000 people on a season ticket holder waiting list just waiting to buy tickets. That's very good. But that's also a byproduct of maintaining this level of commitment to your fans in good times and bad. And I would especially say consistently. Because it's very easy to have people come when you win. It's a very different story when you're not winning, but it's about creating a commitment and what I would refer to as a reciprocal relationship between the fan and the organization, that we're here for you, you're here for us, through thick, through thin. Yes? There were. Our friends from Texas A&M University. Any Aggies in the house before I talk? Now I know you won't raise your hand. Our friends from Texas A&M have had a long-standing tradition of using what is called the 12th man. It was at a collegiate level. We have been using it since 1983. And we didn't think that there was an infringement. We happened to play in the NFC Championship game in 2005. I think some Aggie alumni saw what we were doing and got a little perturbed. We figured out a way to resolve it with Texas A&M, and we continue to use the trademark today. It is a part and parcel to who we are. Our fans are the most important asset that this organization has, even greater than the players, and we've all agreed to that. Our fans are our most important asset. Well, there are other teams do use it unofficially or non-legally. And there are other teams that do that, but they have not made it the focal point that we have made it, as exhibited by some of the things that I've shown you here today. I know I've got about 10 minutes left, so I want to move on quickly to Sounders and tell you a little bit of how this all applied to Sounders as well. Privileged to lead this charge as it relates to the brand guide. Similar things in place. What I think is important here as we take away is that we were going after a completely different market. For those of you that don't know about Major League Soccer, it is a very competitive game. It is trying to get to the likes of the English Premier League. For those of you follow international soccer from across the pond, it is the world sport. This is the world's game. There's no question about it. There's no answer. If you want to fight me on that, we can talk about it afterward. But it is the game of the world. And we had the privilege and opportunity of putting together some benchmarks. Here is the kind of the ownership group of that I want to just have you have. On the right is Todd Leiweke, our CEO, Don Garber, the commissioner of Major League Soccer, Joe Roth, one of our owners, and Adrian Hanauer. This doesn't happen without a great leadership group. And great leadership groups and ownership groups come together and create a common unity and a common bond. We immediately started to deploy the tactics that we used for the Seahawks to do that, and that's where we came up with these definitions. But the brand objectives and brand personality and facts and symbols were different. Instead of being necessarily some things, we were different things for Sounders. The three core words became passion. That's a unifying theme. Courage, though, is a very soccer term or football term. And community was about what was at the core of this. Soccer, I don't know if you know, in Washington State and the Pacific Northwest is the highest per capita of playing soccer in the United States. Not California. They have more players because of mere population, but not per capita. This is a major underpinnings of soccer in the Pacific Northwest. And so some of those things that we wanted to really emphasize is in the bottom left-hand corner here. How does the brand make me look? It makes me look astute. That is not a Seahawks term. Unique, that is not a Seahawks term. Worldly, that is not a Seahawks term. Avid, yes is. Loyal, yes. Insider, yes. Unifying, maybe, maybe not. There was a different perspective. Kevin asked me earlier what is the correlation between the Seahawks season ticket base and the 22,000 season tickets we've been privileged to sell for Sounders FC. There's a 5% parallel. That's nothing. You would think it would be much greater than that, maybe 40 to 50%. It's nothing because this is a totally different market. This is a market of 20, a demo would look 20 to 38, either double income, no kids, dinks, or double income kids that live in urban Seattle. Totally different mindset than what you would see with a Seahawks fan. And we took these facts and symbols of the FC badge, which is very international in scope, similar to Arsenal, fans, scarves, jerseys, rave green, bands, Drew Carey, horns, streamers, and drums. The NFL is very prohibitive as it relates to things on the field. Major League Soccer, you could have everything but a smoke bomb. It's amazing. Streamers are going on the field. They could care less. Things are hitting the players. That's part of the game because you've seen it in Europe. It's part of an amazing, historic, this is a celebration. This is a part of getting people together. So we used the same brand model and brand essence, but we had a different market that we were going after. Here's the imagery. There was an identity and color guidelines, the graphics, the badge, courage. And that's translated with milestones of different things that we've put together. And those milestones were coalescing with season ticket sales. And we could spend another hour talking about Sounders FC, but the point is that when you have a foundation in place for a strategic mission, a strategic vision, that you can direct that to whatever property you have. With Seahawks, it was to rebrand a property that had been there for a very long time, and we were rebranding ourselves. But for Sounders, it was a creation of something new, something fresh, something we could define ourselves, something that was to be introduced. But I think Mark said it best earlier when we were talking a little bit earlier in our advisory board about leadership. Leadership begins with you. Leadership begins with you setting the course of understanding what's going on in your personal business world or the collective business world, charting it out, understanding what it is, and setting a clear vision. Because when there's a clear vision, outstanding results occur. We're very fortunate with Sounders FC, 22,000 season tickets. We just announced today we're playing an international match against FC Barcelona in August. We have Chelsea coming. We have another major announcement coming. We have the opportunity to host the MLS Cup this year. Soccer is a big, big deal. And we have the infrastructure with the Seahawks to be able to have all these core key competencies in place to be able to derive that. But that comes from really good leadership, good strategic thinking, good planning that starts all with a mission statement, a brand essence, a sound characteristics. Look at these fan characteristics here. Hardworking, caffeinated. That describes Seattle. That describes everybody in the Pacific Northwest. Forward-thinking, success-oriented, entrepreneurial. I encourage you not as a plug for the Sounders FC, but more as an opportunity for you to learn more about soccer and how it's impacting the world, to look at EPL games, to look at Major League Soccer games, to go to SoundersFC.com and see those different types of things with scarves. We did a whole scarfing campaign that was amazing. I know I'm sounding a little self-serving, and that's not my point. The point is you have to do your research up front. We spent 16 months, only 16, not compared to 5 years with our friends from up north, but 16 months investigating how to launch Sounders FC. It took a lot of time. We spent a year on the logo. A year. That's ridiculous. We're a fast, quick-moving organization. But the time that you take to build that can reap very successful rewards as you look down the road. I know our time is cutting up short here. I want to make sure that I have some time to answer some questions on Sounders or Seahawks. I appreciate your time and energy and listening to me ramble up here about a couple stories and do some other things. Can I answer any questions, actually, as it relates to practical for the students about getting into sports or what's the best path or any of those type of questions? I'm happy to do that now or later. Any questions I can help you with? Yes, sir. Have a club level? No. Yeah. You know, that whole club level mantra during the 90s was this big hype, right? It was the extra amenities, extra service, extra this, and we'll put an extra couple $100 on your ticket. And, you know, the reality was the value proposition needed to match that, which is one of the biggest things that the NFL struggles with today. We just got an NFL benchmarking survey last year about club-level experiences, and I'll share with you in the room that 2/3 of the team were below expectations as it relates to those measurements and those metrics. We're fortunately above that, but not at a level that we're nearly comfortable with. So to answer that question again today, would we build a club level? Yes, we'd build a club level. And I think the Mariners, our friends, have done a phenomenal job with their club level experience and with some of the dugout things that they've done. You have to create moments of truth that are very, very important and very personal for those. So the number, I think, unfortunately our lost friends, or our fellow friends lost, meaning that they moved to Oklahoma, had a club level problem as well with the Sonics and Key Arena. And they built, you know, a number of club level seats and then abandoned that program. I think the club level concept is the right one, but it needs to be thought out very strategically. The number of seats it needs to be thought out very well. And then there are teams that buck that system. The Dallas Cowboys have bucked that. They're building a brand new stadium, $1.2 billion, that's going to open this fall. And they've sold out their club level seats, even with seat license is between $10,000 and $25,000. So it depends on the market as well. So there's a lot of research that needs to be done. In the case of the Seahawks, I think we probably have a few too many club level seats. We've expanded our club level. We've made it much more inclusive, to your point. There are things that we have done to tweak that, but that has taken time and money and resources. I think we're very pleased at where the club level is today, but that doesn't mean where we are today with the club level will be anywhere satisfactory 5 years from now. The world is changing far too quickly. The demands and the technology are changing far too quickly to be able to rest on our laurels on a club level experience that's in 2009 that's good to 2014, which may not be good at the same level. So there's lots of different things that we have to look at constantly as it relates to that. And that's across all 134 teams if you include, or 148 teams if you include MLS, NHL, Major League Baseball, NBA, and NFL. Good question. Yep. You had to ask that question. I think some of you read a little bit about news about a certain Apple Cup that may or may not have been played at Quest Field. There's a very sincere commitment to have college football at Quest Field when it makes sense. We've hosted a Wazoo game every year. Obviously, we've hosted the Central and Washington games for a number of years, the battle in Seattle, and we wish that could continue, obviously. There is a sincere. We love college football. We love everything about what college football represents as it relates to playing that and bringing people together at Quest Field. So that's a continued initiative that we'll pursue.
What's the shelf life of brand new such as this, and when do you begin to start working on your next approach?
Probably next week. No, it's really, I would say it's a season-to-season thing. You tweak things for probably 3 or 4 years. We're right in line now that we've launched Sounders FC, to look at that concept with this as it relates to Seahawks and tweak it again. We'll probably get together probably within the next 4 months and start to do that. You're constantly monitoring your brand. You're constantly reevaluating and strategizing what are the key outside factors that have influenced your brand. And we're at that point right now where we need to do that. I would say corporately, you're probably doing it more frequently. Sports has a little luxury of having that. We've had, but the great thing about our product and the hardest thing about our product is that if you work for Jones Soda, your Jones Soda product is the same product every time. You open up a bottle of Jones Cola and it tastes like Jones Cola. If it tastes like Apple, there's a problem. There's a label problem, right? There's a product problem. Well, once we put a product on the relates to GE or NBC, where you've got these different product lines that you're constantly monitoring. There's one main central brand. Now with Sounders FTC, there's 2. We're developing a brand guide as it relates to Quest Field and the other entities that we have. Kale. Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm glad you asked it. Winning is not everything. It's great. Don't get me wrong. It's fantastic. But it's much more about what we talked about, I think, earlier, is about a fan experience, a lasting impression, a child having fond memories of growing up following football or following baseball, for that matter, or following soccer, seeing their childhood hero. Fans relate as an uptick if you sell between 10 and 15% when you win. It's not dramatic. It really isn't. The old adage, or the adage that you may have heard, that winning solves all cures, no. Winning delays all problems is what it does, or opportunities as it relates. So winning just puts a mask on things for a little bit of time. If you've got a problem that just masks it, what you really need to do is have strategic organization as it relates to the core processes of what you're doing. Revenue increase, and typically expense decrease, or some kind of combination of that. But the fan experience, as I think we've highlighted, and not to beat a dead horse, is really paramount to that. Making the fan feel like they're empowered, having the fan feel like they understand what's going on and you're educating them, having them feel like they had a great time, having them feel like they've had a valued part or a value increment as it relates to the experience that they've enjoyed, those are the most important aspects. I think I'm getting the cue to move along, so thank you for your time.